Hi, it's your instructor, Jay, for career development for the non-business major. I want to mention something to you as we're starting to do one of our big workshops. You're going to be doing some recordings as a part of this course, and I want you to have some fun with it. I don't want you to get too keyed up because you have no idea how many takes I have to do in order to get one of these videos done. And so I think I'm on like take 9 right now because I keep flubbing up the whole thing and having to start over. In fact, at one point, the director of financial aid called me. So on the PowerPoint, up appeared Richard O'Connor because we use Zoom phones here. So don't be too hard on yourself. It's important to, sometimes it's more important to get it done than to get it right. So yeah, I should take my own advice. So this week, we're going to be talking about cover letters and resumes. You're going to have a quiz on this due this week, but I'm giving you 2 weeks to actually complete a resume and a cover letter for me to review. I want you to actually find a job ad that you would apply for. It's probably better if it's related to your career or major, but I actually want you to direct it towards that job ad and to share with me what the job ad is. And so I'm going to give you 2 weeks for that because last year I gave students 1 week and I really felt like they could benefit from that second week. All right, so I'm going to share my screen and off we go. So this is a message of hope. I want you to know that it is going to be okay. Not only creating a resume and a cover letter, but the whole job search is going to be okay. Now, I'm going to do resumes in this video first, and then I'll do cover letters in a separate video. That way it won't be too long a video and too much information to have to absorb all at once. I got some feedback that it was a lot as one video, so we'll mix it up a bit. Yay. All right. Really important. When you do submit your resume and cover letter, I want you to submit it via Moodle. Don't email it to me or Google Doc share it with me. It's just cleaner if you use the Moodle. If you are having difficulties, you can reach out to Rebecca Lescarbeau or me, and we'll figure something out. Now, resumes and cover letters, like medical science, are subjective. This wasn't as controversial a slide 6 years ago when I first started using it, but here we are. So one smug resume expert is going to tell you that it's got to be in a particular format. Another one hates this font. Another one wants to see it look like this. Another one's going to tell you that the dates have to be structured in a particular way. One hiring manager likes that you're really honest about being fired. Another won't even look at your resume. So it's subjective. And at the end of the day, it's really pass fail. I mean, I could shred your resume and your cover letter and tell you I'm going to line my bird cage with it. I'd need to get a bird first. But if you get an interview, what do I know? Right? It's pass or fail. Your resume and cover letter have one job and one job only, and that is to get you an interview. Because once you're in the interview, anything can happen. You can make it impossible for them to hire the other candidate. I've done it. I've gone in to an interview when I knew I was not the preferred candidate, that they had somebody they liked in-house, and through the strength of my answers, I was able to make it impossible for them to hire the other candidate. But that's a different workshop, and we'll get to that later in this course. But for right now, the main thing to know is that your resume and cover letter, if they get you in the room, they did their job and it's good enough. If you employ what I'm going to teach you, it's more likely that you're improving your odds for them to like your resume enough to bring you in for the interview. That's why we're doing this. So I see the bad resumes. So many bad resumes. I mean, I've seen handwritten resumes. My boss actually gets really mad when I show that slide. Ironically, I don't even actually drink. The only thing I drink is coffee. No, admittedly, way too much. But there we are. But the problems I usually see are the writing. It's not just the formatting. Don't get me wrong, the formatting's bad too, but it's not just the formatting. And so it doesn't matter what format you use if it's infected with typos, misspelled words, and bad grammar. That's going to leap off the page and tackle the recruiter, and it's going to be a no, even before they delve into it. So we got to look at our spelling, our punctuation, our formatting, and our accuracy. Mistakes are going to take away from whatever you put for education. Nobody wants that nurse who can't spell oncology. Also, make sure that you're not overwriting. It's got to make sense when I read it. And sometimes I read resumes and I read line after line, and I'm reading it and I'm rereading it and I'm rereading it again and again. Yes, I see I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but I now have a wireless caller calling me. You know what we're going to do? We're going to send that right to voicemail. I'm rereading and rereading and reading that bullet point. And at the end of the day, I can't make heads or tail out of what it means. So we got to make sure it makes sense. Part of that is we've got to make sure that the word we're using, even though it's a $45 word, it's got to mean what we think it means in the way we're using it. Now, when I was your age, I used to have to crawl across a dust-filled library rug to find the only source in the universe to tell me what a word meant. It was called a dictionary, and I would have to flip through it. Sometimes I wasn't spelling the word right, and so it would take several minutes to find it. Now you don't even have to type the word in. You could just ask your personal assistant. You could ask Siri, you could ask Alexa what the word means, and they will tell you, right? You could ask Grok, you could ask Google's AI, you could ask so many resources. So there's really no excuse for not knowing what a word means. And if you check, you're not going to be embarrassed. Trying to sound super clever, and I'm guilty of this a lot, can backfire and have the opposite effect. All right. Do not use pronouns on your resume. Don't do it. I, me, they, we. I get really upset when I see those on a resume. You can use them on your cover. You can use them on LinkedIn. Do not put a pronoun on your resume. I will circle it and get mad. And you probably won't see me being mad, but I'll be rageful. Yeah. So common mistakes that I see on resumes, and I go over these each year, and I know I'll see them again, but at least I'll know I tried. Random acts of capitalization. You can't just randomly capitalize words. There's got to be a rhyme or reason. So if you're putting a job title and it's speech pathologist, you can't just capitalize the S and leave the P lowercase. Or worse, leave the S lowercase and capitalize the P. That's just not going to work. But I see that all the time. I never saw that until cell phones became a thing. And I blame texting, but here we are. Autocorrect is going to mess with your bacon. Don't let it. It doesn't care if you get an interview. It cares what its program tells it to do. So don't rely on it. I don't want you to be a source of comic relief for the talent acquisition team. Do not send out your resume unless 2 other people have looked at it, because you're going to spend hours and hours on these. And at some point, the radiation from your screen is going to start doing a number on the muscles around your eyes, and you're not even going to see that you're using the wrong there. But it's going to leap off the page and tackle the recruiter. Now, formatting does matter. Can anyone tell me how long a recruiter looks at your resume? That's right, 6 seconds. When I started in this business, it was 30. So things are getting even tighter. Now, they're always evolving, resumes. What we did 10 years ago, we laugh at now. So you've got to keep up with the styles and the trends, but you don't want to be so trendy that you alienate the HR director who's my age and already a little wary of technology. So a lot of times students will go on these websites and download these templates that look snazzy and cute and flashy. Recruiters hate them. Hiring managers hate them. They're so fancy, but a lot of it's style over substance. And it doesn't actually give you enough space to do justice to your credentials and your qualifications. It just doesn't work. And again, your HR recruiter may be my age. Now, be honest, you're less surprised that I was once young, more surprised that I once actually had hair. Templates can be good unless you miss a step. So some templates are actually programmed so that it auto on each page puts insert name here. And if you're not careful or heaven forbid, you probably have a new laptop and you're rocking the current version of Windows 360, whereas over here in HR, we're still operating Windows XP. And so when we unload your Word document, it generates a second page. And now there's the insert name here. And that looks sloppy and unprofessional. If you send it as a PDF, it'll be fine because you've frozen that document in time. And so that will work. It'll also, but you have to be really careful. Make sure that you don't send a blank page with your resume. No headshots. Do not include a photo. Save it for LinkedIn. And we don't want glamour shots. We want professional looking pictures. Again, we're creating a professional brand for you. So don't ruin that right off the get-go by putting your picture on your resume. Also, avoid color. You could spend 7 hours picking out just the perfect shade of salmon on the color wheel in your computer, on your MacBook, and your MacBook Air Pro. But when the Human Resources Department prints it in black and white, it's going to become this ugly shade of gray that's hard to read. And so black and white is usually the best. Your resume must never say hello. There are templates out there on some of the very common document packages out there, like I forget if it's Google Docs or Microsoft Word or Pages, but it actually has one on there that says hello and has a place for you to upload your photo. Do not use that resume template. Don't send that to me. Also, do not send me the red or the green resume template. It's just not professional. It's not good enough for you. Also, do not send me this template. I never want to see this template again. It's terrible. It's an example of what I call the 2-column approach. It just doesn't work. And worst of all, then you're locked into that format onto the next page when you don't have things that easily can be broken down into 2 columns. And so it's going to create a formatting nightmare for you and for me. Also, just avoid 2 columns in general. Don't send me any of those resumes. They're not good enough for your resume. Don't use this one either. This one is really outdated because all the headings are on one side and all the information's on the other side. And we're going to talk about why that's bad. But you'll cause me psychic distress if you use that. So you're hearing a lot of negatives. So what should you do? And yes, that's probably the first Muppet you've seen in my PowerPoints because I have a slight Muppet addiction. So that probably won't be the last Muppet. Sorry. So the secret to winning resumes, all you have to do is go to the Elms College website, go to what should be familiar to you, Elms Connect, click on that, go up to, it probably opens and defaults to the student page. On mine, I have to actually click on student. And then lo and behold, in the middle column, there's a section called Career Services. And if you click on that hyperlink, it will take you to the Career Services page. There's all sorts of cool things on here. But the only one I'm going to talk about right now is Resources and Samples. And if you go to Resources and Samples, you'll see, oh, lo and behold, there is a professional resume template link. Now, don't save it. Download it and save it to your computer, don't start typing and save it to this template, or I'll have to erase it and start over and re-upload a blank one. But that template will serve you well. There are also there's the review master that I've talked about and the review tool. And when I say I've talked about it, I mean in Moodle. I typed it in there. You can access those here and use them to sort of self-check your resume before you send it to me. And that will serve you well. Now, the template looks like this, and this is a dynamite template. Employers love it. You should use it, right? It has a reasonable size for your header for name, professional email, phone number, city, state. I say header, it's not really a header. It's actually in the document, but this is a good size. It's got a place for your summary. We're going to put a couple highlight bullets there. We're going to put, your education. Now, because you haven't graduated yet, you must put anticipated or expected, unless you have a time machine. Anticipated or expected. If you have a time machine, reach out. We'll go back to the 1970s. There's some $6 Million Man episodes I want to go back and watch. You probably have no idea what that is. But got a lot of TV I want to watch from the 1970s. Thank goodness for Tubi and YouTube. So then we go into your core competencies section. Now I'm going to break down what good core competencies are, but when I'm talking about core competencies, this is where they are. Notice that we're using a lot of bullets. I'm going to talk about that more. We've got related experience. We've got a room for a project. If you don't have a project, we can just delete that section or repurpose it to something else like athletics or clubs or something else. We've got room for other experience in leadership and community involvement. Remember, athletics has value. If you are involved in a sport currently, we're going to treat that just like a job. Where it says position title, we're going to put your position on the field or the court or the pitch or whatever kind of sport you're playing. We're going to put that there, the team name, and we're going to list some statistical accomplishments. Or maybe that you were named team captain or that your team made the playoffs. We're going to treat it like a job entry because that has value. There is also a resource for cover letters that you can download, and it'll break down how to do a cover letter. Goose, who's our graphic design director, Dr. Goose, just walked by my office. So his class actually redesigned this and the other handouts for me one summer with his graphic design interns, and they did a great job. And it'll give you a checklist. That checklist will point out everything you need to know and more, including what's in here and more. So, and that's what the link is for the cover letter. And this is what the handout looks like. And we're going to go over that formula. You're probably wondering where the footnotes go in your resume. Nah, I'm just messing with you. I have to footnote everything in Chicago and Turabian formatting when I'm doing my coursework. I'm assuming most of you are probably using APA or MLA, but you don't footnote on a resume. Don't put references available upon request. We haven't done that in 15 years. Instead, you're going to have a reference page that has the same header or same contact information at the top. Don't include any hyperlinks on your resume. I want you to remove the hyperlinks. I'll get upset if I see hyperlinks on your resume. I sound like I've got an anger management problem. Elms College students are so much better than my last institution. I used to open the resume and literally people would hear me cry out when I looked at them. Yours are so much better, but hyperlinks do upset me. Font size is important. I'm getting to the age where I can't read fine print anymore. It's really important to be between a 10 and a 12-point font for both the resume and the cover letter. Ideally, 11 to 12-point font. 10's, the older I get, the more 10-point font I have to reach for my glasses. Everything on your resume has to be in reverse chronological order. That means what you are doing now comes first, and then we go backwards in time. Again, unless you have the time machine, in which case we'll go to the 70s, we'll swing over the 80s, then we'll go back to the 1960s. We're going to have some fun. So reverse chronological order. That means Elms College would go first. If you're a transfer student, then you could put your community college second. Do not include high school anymore. Don't include high school. We're only including colleges now. For job, whatever job you have current or most recently goes first, and then we're going to go backwards. Everything is in reverse chronological order. Now, before I was mentioning core competencies, so we want to distinguish between what's a competency and what's a trait. You can have both, but you really want to distinguish between the two. And so you can actually create a professional characteristics section under projects if you don't have a project that you can include, and then you can put those there. But a hard competency would be something like, I'm MBTI certified, so I can actually interpret your Myers-Briggs type indicator test. Not test, survey. It's not a test. My dog likes to think he's friendly. One of those is a hard skill. One of those is a soft skill. He looks pretty good in his tie, doesn't he? My other dog, Cadence, she's actually Bright Spots therapy certified. So she is licensed to dog in rest homes, nursing homes, libraries. Little children actually practice reading to her because she's non-judgmental. You can see she's got her badge on, she's got her vest. I like to think I'm honest. So one of those is a hard skill, one of those is a soft skill. And we often say that it's the hard skills that get you the job, but it's the soft skills that'll help you keep the job. And you always want to be displaying good soft skills. But under core competencies, we want to give the hard skills. So yeah, maybe you know a particular computer language. Maybe you know a particular technique in swallowing disorders. Maybe you know a particular marketing function. Those are all hard skills. You can have professional characteristics, but I'd rather create a separate section for that. And those could be things like teamwork, communication, punctuality, accountability. But keep in mind that being on a team is more convincing than saying you're a team player. So we want to show it, not tell it. We want to prove what we're saying. It doesn't mean as much if I say, this is an awesome slide that is very descriptive, humorous, yet informative. Or, I have a dog, she is cute. But if I show you my dog and she's got her ball in her mouth, and yes, for those of you keeping score at home, that does mean I have 3 Australian Labradoodles. Do you know how much poop that is to pick up a week? Oy. So don't tell me you have leadership, show me you have leadership because you organized the bake sale and you raised $250,000. All right, 25,000. All right, $25 towards a meaningful cause. In the description, don't tell me you went to meetings. That's how you end up in front of a congressional hearing, being asked to name names. Also, we want to be careful about being religious. People are very sensitive to this topic, just as they are about politics. And so right now you're having one of 2 possible reactions to the slide. That's a 50-50 chance at best. So, you don't necessarily want to overemphasize that, particularly not in your cover letter and resume, or even necessarily in your online profile. Some employers have been known to screen out candidates because they felt they were a little bit indiscreet in what they posted online. We want to showcase enthusiasm for the job you're applying for, not just any job. I don't want to hire that person who would be willing to take the job. I want to hire someone who's actually genuinely excited to take this job and to do this job. Be that person, be that candidate. We want to tailor the objective and then the entire resume to what the specifications in the job or job description are. Believe it or not, there's actually a course at Harvard and at Westfield State on Taylor Swift and her song lyrics. Let that sink in. I'm actually a Swiftie though, so I'm fine with it. Most employers actually prefer a profile over an objective. And so an objective tells employers what you want. hard life truth. Employers don't care what you want. They want to know what you can do for them. So a summary or profile gives you an opportunity to give your value proposition on what you have to offer. And that's why it's structured the way it is on this resume template. So communications sciences and disorders major, eager to help individuals with speech and swallowing disorders. Bam, Dean's List. Bam, given the such and such award for communications sciences and disorders majors. And we're off and running. Include languages at the top of the profile. That is a huge value add. So write in one of those bullets, if you can speak another language, if it's American Sign Language, if it is Spanish in particular, Spanish is super valuable. We want that right up at the top. Include athletics, like I said, just like a job. Generally speaking, your most valuable asset at this point in your career is going to be your education. So we're going to put that right after the summary. Keywords. In your job ad, there's going to be certain keywords they're going to include. We want to hit on those hard in the resume and the cover letter. And do you know why? Because a human being may never actually look at your resume. They may just scan that into a computer program. And if it doesn't have enough keywords, it's a no. And no human being gets forwarded that resume. So that's why keywords are so important. That's how you unlock the recruiter. So, I remember back in the day at the One Stop Career Center, we used to shrink down all the keywords to a 1-point font, hide it in the header and the footer, and then change the font color to white so that our customers would get really high scores on the keywords. That's why I don't teach ethics. Anyway, when you go to the interview, or if you're mailing the resume and the cover letter, then we want to make sure we're using a nice heavy resume paper, something with a watermark, something with a high cotton thread count, and a really good printer. In fact, I would just go to Office Max, go to Staples, have them printed on their thermonuclear printer so that there isn't that one line that kind of squiggles from your inkjet printer, and you can get matching envelopes. Make sure you've got a professional email. I have done this workshop with the regional local trauma one hospital, and they have emphasized this point. They have actually had to reach out to candidates and say, we're super interested in you, but we can't forward your materials with that email. So you've got to have a professional email. It can't be Hot Mama Love Goddess 1414 at Yahoo. And speaking of that, don't send me a resume with a Yahoo or Hotmail email address. Create a professional Gmail. For this resume, it doesn't have to be even a real email, but it's gotta be a Gmail or something current. Otherwise, the employer's gonna think you're rocking it like it's 1997. And Matchbox 20 is at the top of the charts. And Smash Mouth with that awful All-Star song. Worst remake in history, arguably. Also, do me a favor, and this week, Google your name and your address, and I hope nothing comes up. But if, you got a little too creative at St. Patrick's Day last year, there is time to get that stuff taken down so that it doesn't come up in an email, a Google search, because no employer is going to give you $80,000 a year without Googling your name at least. So don't share too much, particularly information not in your favor. If there is something you need to disclose, we can always do that after the fact when you're either asking for an accommodation or negotiating for the job. Your resume should be a complete page. So it should be 1 page or 2, but not 1.5, not 1/14, not 1/4. Otherwise, it looks like your resume has a hangnail. And let's face it, those are unsightly. So we need full pages. It can be 1 page, it can be 2 pages. Unless you've been Secretary of State, your resume should not be more than 2 pages. A CV is different, but we're not talking about CVs. That's a different workshop. That's a different industry. You've got to mix up your language. You can't tell me you've got strong communication skills, strong interpersonal skills, and a strong command of Microsoft and a strong background. You can't keep using the same words. You can't, after every bullet, use the word responsible. That will just upset me. And I will flag it and flag it. I will run out of red ink, metaphorical red ink, because I'll be doing this on the computer. But you've got to mix up your language. Try not to use the same action word twice, if at all possible. So don't say contributed 4 times. Don't say provided 4 times. Find different words. Also, well, this is a good example of what I'm talking about, right? So load, make, maintain, make. This looks horrible. It looks like you have no vocabulary. So let's not do that. Also, if it's the same job, don't just keep putting the same words. If you have to, put them together. Walmart, dates, cashier, CVS, dates, cashier. But there's probably a different way to describe what you're doing, so you don't have to do it that way. Also, don't copy the job description you have. Those are not written to be used on a resume. And I can always tell because there's always an S where it shouldn't be in the bullets. These date back to scientific management, to Frederick Taylor, or what was known as Taylorism, where they actually did time studies to figure out the ideal individual to fit a particular job description. And so don't do that. We need to use the correct tense. If you're currently working that job, it can be present tense. If you haven't worked that job in a year, it has to be in past tense, including the bullets. Very important. Do include dollar amounts, sales goals, percentages, numbers. Those help paint a picture in the mind of the talent acquisition person. Again, we're showing, we're not telling. Everything on your resume has to be true. Otherwise, that is grounds for dismissal. You cannot lie on your resume or cover letter. This isn't creative writing 101. That's a different course in a different department. Also, don't put tables on your resume unless you hide the grid lines. It's just not visually appealing. Do use bullet points, except on your education. That is how you break things up so that it's easier to read. Nancy also gets mad when I use that slide. But you need to bullet things instead of using a text chunk like this. No one can read this. No one's going to want to read this. Even if you try right now, you're going to get to about the 5th line and your brain's going to go into screensaver mode and you're not going to be able to finish it. And worst of all, that's all one sentence. So it's a run-on sentence, which is really bad. So we need to break that up. We need to make it easy to read and relevant. I have a thing for puppets. White space on your resume is bad. It draws in the eyes, but it doesn't tell us anything. It's like we're driving down Interstate 91 and we see a billboard, but there's nothing on it. It's really expensive type of marketing, but no one's message is getting used. And usually that's caused by a lack of balance, right? You've got all your headings on one side, but all the information I should actually be reading is here. But because vacuums there's a scientific principle about vacuums filling. The eyes naturally go over here instead of to where the important stuff is. Don't pick a funky font. You're a professional. Do not use Comic Sans. Don't use Wingding. Use something professional like Times New Roman, Arial. Don't be using Gothic fonts, right? You can't have pictures. You can't have shapes. You can't have symbols. I'm going to mark those as incorrect on your resume. This isn't a graphic design course. Don't use a quarter of the page for your name. They're going to think you have a narcissistic personality disorder. Also, use years. Don't use months and years. And for my sanity, please don't include entire dates. Only recently did I start seeing that people were using entire dates. Like, no, just the year. Also, this is an appropriate time to let you know, do not include the street address for your employer or your school, just the city and state. I don't want the street address. This is not an application. It's a resume. Do not include references on the same page. I used to work at a college that had a master's degree in cannabis studies. I'm not making that up. It was horrible. It was embarrassing. Oddly enough, it wasn't successful because people would sign up super interested in it and they wouldn't follow through. It was actually an MBA in cannabis. And what was awkward was we couldn't have internships at cannabis locations. Now, while cannabis is decriminalized in Massachusetts, it's still not legal under the federal government. So because we accepted federal dollars, we couldn't allow any internships. We couldn't allow them to recruit on campus. So it was it was a really bad idea. Do not have borders on your resume. We're not scrapbooking. And look at that. You survived it, right? So if you do have questions about your resume, feel free to reach out. I'm going to stop the share and I'm going to close this out. And one in the books. Good job. I'm looking forward to seeing your resume. Again, reach out if you've got questions or concerns. Thank you for watching this lecture.